What's up, pirates? It's Rishi from Rishi TCG here, and we're back with another video. And in today's video, we're gonna go through the OP 8.5 Rob Lucci full guide. We're back with another full guide, and in this full guide, we're gonna go through a deck list by Holden Miller, who just recently got second at the San Diego Regional, and we're gonna go by card explanation of why it's good. Why I think the counts he picked are good, and my findings on it. And then on top of that, we're going to talk about matchup guides, and we're going to talk about every really important matchup right now that you might see in a competitive environment, especially those treasure cups and regionals that are coming up. So stay tuned. This is going to be like a really good video, informative, and sit back and relax, and let's get into it. So let's first talk about the deck list, and you can go check out like his actual post on it and anything he has to say on his Twitter at Flyest Raven. But let's talk about the deck list. The deck list is pretty standard. You can already see right off the back that we have 2 Kuzan now instead of that 4 we used to play. And some couple other changes is that 3 span 9, and we'll talk about the Brooks in a second, but Let's start by talking about each card, card by card. Let's talk about Span 9. Okay, so Span 9 is a great card because it allows you to do that crucial combo, the Rebecca Span 9 combo off of Gecko, which is really important, especially in mirror matches or any sort of matches where they're trying to flood board. So not seeing the Span 9 can be really crucial. However, not seeing the Helmeppo, you could still have Tempest or Ice Age. So I think Span 9 at 3 makes sense, because especially being in a Doofy meta, really needing that Gecko to spit out that Lucci. It's really important. Okay. Now, we used to run Kuzan at 4 because Kuzan was so important in the past environment. But, with Doofy being one of the strongest decks in the meta, Kuzan's not the best into Doofy. However, Kuzan's still good into a couple rogue matchups, our decks like Purple, Luffy, and Bonnie. And it still gives us that draw 1 effect. And especially in the mirror, it's necessary to combat that Jack that they play because it's an 11 cost, or have any way to, throw them off curve. So we're still going to run it at 2, but that means we can't really mulligan for it. And, I always thought that I was going to run this at 4, but at 2, it still feels good. However, in the Doofy matchup, it's not a very good card, other than the fact that it replaces itself. But, drawing cards in the Doofy matchup is very important because they can just pudding you. So, the reason I'm saying it's not good is if you see my Doofy guide, I talk about how you just bounce the law back. They play bounce law and they bounce Kuzan back. They get a card back. You put it in your hand, and eventually they gather up enough cards they pudding you. So, let's talk about the next card, though. So, Khalifa, we're putting 4 Khalifa in there because the draw 2, trash 2 cards in hand is so optimal. I think that there is space if you wanted to slot in, take out 1 Khalifa and put in like a Kaku or a Hattori or something like that. There is space for tech 2Ks, but, I think 4 Khalifa is fine. Just having that CP9 2K is really important, having those 8 CP9 targets, because we're going to also play the 4 Who's Who's we're talking about in a second. And we'll go to the next card that's going to come up, which is Spandom. Spandum's really, really important because Spandom lets you get a card from the utility Moria and build up your trash in the BY matchup. So, you really need Spandom, and that's why we're running it at 4. And, Spandum's, not always the best opener, but can be very useful if you have a general idea of your, trash and how your deck is going in the mid game, and if you need to search out a Tempest kick, or even, search out a 2K into some more aggressive matchups. Okay, so, let's go ahead and talk about Sabo. And Sabo is, before we go ahead and talk about Sabo, I'm going to pause the video, make sure everything is working, because... Alright, yeah, it was working, so we're good. Because I've had a lot of takes this video, and I just wanted to double check. Anyway, so we're at Sabo, and in this meta, because it's a more blue dominant meta, and, Sabo's not the greatest blocker into into Doofy just because they have that Jozu. We're running him at 3, but still very consistent piece because you can Rebecca Sabo in the mirror or you can Sabo in the BY matchup. So it's very necessary in the BY matchup. And I could see myself getting punished for not running 4 Sabo, but here we are at 3. At least I don't think I can go below 3. I know some deck lists run 2, but Sabo is just so important for setting up those late game turns, and I think knowing how to use Sabo to its truest potential might help you understand why it's such a good card. And one of the scenarios that I can give you right off the bat is in the BY matchup, one of the game plans is you just play 2 big bodies. You go Jack, you play Gecko, and then you just try to keep spamming Sabos and swinging 9 3 times a turn and slowly extracting them. That's just one of them, and that helps you extend the game and essentially win the BY matchup. Okay, so Rebecca blocker, I'm running at 4, obviously, because we're running the Rebecca Span 9 combo. So obviously, if I'm gonna increase Span 9 or Holden's gonna increase Span 9, he's not gonna reduce the Rebecca. So we're just running it at 4. I think it's pretty obvious. The 4 Lucci. Nothing really to say about this. You need 4 Lucci. Same reason we just said about Rebecca. 4 Gecko. Yeah, don't ask questions, just put it in your deck. You'll see, you understand. 4 Jacks. Okay, so this card though, a little bit of a card that some people like to run at 2 or 3 or even, not run it. Nah, I don't think anybody doesn't run it, but some people run it at 2, but I like to run it at 4, and Holden likes to run it at 4, and I ran it at 4 before too when I, played last set, and that's because in seeing it on curve and the mirror is just so important into winning those type of things. So you need to see this card, especially into matchups like Doofy or the mirror. So being able to mulligan for this card, I put it at a 4, so I'm able to just say if I don't have it in my hand, I want to mulligan for it, I have a good chance to get it, because it's a 4 of in my deck. So yeah, we'll go to the Who's Who is the next card I want to talk about, and it's a 2K. Obviously, I think this card is alright. It comes up sometimes, in situations when they play a Kuzan on curve, but that situation might not happen as much. So again, I think if you wanted to cut 1/2/2 for a tech 2K, I think it would be fine. But other than that, I mean, it can come up in the Zoro matchup. So Who's Who isn't a bad card. All right, Helmeppo. We're running 2 Helmeppo. I mean, I didn't ever want to put this card to 3. I know some people can put it to 3, but I'd rather put Span 9 to 3 just because, if you don't have Helmeppo, you could still, potentially have Ice Age Tempest Kick. So, having 2, I think, is a good number, and I think I'd at least see 1 per game. And, I happen to always see 2 because I'm unlucky. But let's go to the next card, which is Ice Age. So, Ice Age is killer card, -5, and a KO, and it does what Who's Who does, so you need it. You need it to combo with Gecko. You run it at 4, obviously. I would never cut this card, especially with Any's Lobby gone. And then Tempest Kick, the Great Eruption, just Great Eruption, it's really good. It can filter in the early game if you don't need it. Or, it can provide really good value with your Gecko and stuff like that, and comboing with your Jack or other cards. But, let's talk about Brook. Because, Brook's the really standing out card in this set. Or not set, but deck. And, Brook is really good this set because of these aggro matchups Doofy. And Brook's able to just, KO that 1 cost on curve so they can't, bounce along and get some value from it, or even Josu on 6. So getting rid of that 1 cost. And then it acts as a pseudo blocker, as in when it swings, it has an effect that is -1 KO at 0 cost. So basically, if Doofy doesn't choose to clear it and swing it face, they're gonna lose a body every turn, and combined with Jack, they're just gonna lose a shit ton of body. And on top of that, this little guy can be played with Rebecca, so a blocker and another pseudo blocker. So you guys can need to view this card as a blocker into matchups like Doofy, because he really is a blocker in his own way, and he's probably one of the best cards. And the reason he shot up so much is because people are seeing that, and also EB is really short printed. So fuck. Okay, so now that we've talked about all the key cards in this matchup, let's go ahead and like jump straight into like Mulligan and talk about, what you should be looking for in your opening hands. So this is a general Mulligan, but obviously for matchup by matchup, it's gonna change. And in the advanced matchup part of this guide, we're gonna talk about that in a second. But let's first talk about like the general Mulligan. Especially if you're a beginner, it could be better to focus on these things. So when you go first, you're probably gonna want to look for Jack most of the time. And I think like having that big body is just that security that your late game is probably gonna be pretty strong. But if you see Brook and a Jack, that's pretty good going first, or expand them and a Jack. I would never like Mulligan a hand with Jack in it. But if you get Brook and you get Spandam and you get like a Gecko, I consider it. But honestly, I'd still Mulligan for Jack. So I would, to be honest, just like always just Mulligan for Jack in most matchups. But we can talk about the matchups like you'd Mulligan for Doofy, which would be not Mulligan for Brook, which would be Doofy, but you still Mulligan for Jack. So I don't know what I'm saying. But second, it's a little different because in some matchups you want to Mulligan for like Kuzan, especially if it's like I'm trying to think of like Purple Luffy or some shit like that. Because you might not get like Gecko might not be guaranteed like really soon, and Kuzan lets you like kill those bigger bodies that ramp. They don't have a way to deal with it right now, so like it's a little different. But these are like some really good cards. Spandam's like essentially okay because you can't really search out any of your big bodies, so it's not that great. So you want to have your big bodies in hand early. So essentially, mulliganing for big bodies is probably the strat. But having cards like Kuzan and matchups like Purple Luffy is important. And we're gonna talk about the key cards in some certain matchups where it's a little different, and the mulligan strategies just kind of flow differently. So let's go to the next thing I'm gonna talk about, which is the matchup spread. And this data is provided by TCG Matchmaking, and that's the rank service. And I pay for their Patreon, so I can look at this data, and it's pretty cool. Obviously, I didn't want to provide all the data because it's a paid service, so I marked out the data on top. But the data on the bottom is actually Rob Lucci data currently from the last week on 8.5. So I think that's like a good like 10, like thousands upon thousands of games for each category, and maybe some categories like Nami or NL would have like a couple hundred. So let's talk about Doflamingo. So Doflamingo, we have a 51% win rate on average over all Lucci players, and I think that's pretty good, and that's solid because, Doofy is a pretty easy matchup, but we'll talk about that. And seeing the 50% even matchup on Rob Lucci is good, but I think there are things that I can teach you guys that would make your win rate a little higher than the average into Lucci, but it is, technically even between two good players. And then the Purple Luffy matchup, don't know why the data says 58%. Maybe the Purple Luffys are really bad. I don't know. But, I don't really beat that deck that often if I play it, just because we'll talk about a couple things. I mean, I think I beat it on Sim, but I know a couple good Purple Luffy players in person, and they've topped before, and like I cannot beat them. But, I mean, that's because they know what their deck is doing. And it's not that confusing, and you can look at it actually on the Purple Luffy guide that my friend made on my channel, and he topped with it. But yeah, and then BY Luffy, one of the worst matchups, 32% win rate. Probably not that my win rate's not that low into it, but I can see what the average is, and we'll talk about how to play that matchup. And it's a really weird matchup if you don't know how to play it, but once you know how to play it, at least you have a plan and you'll feel better about it, and sometimes you'll win. And, and then maybe most of the time you'll win into bad ones. And then Bonnie, Bonnie's one of those decks where like I feel like they only win if they really high roll you, and that's through like carrots and Dofis. So I don't think that you should worry about Bonnie. It means a very high win rate. NL, however, NL can be kind of hard, especially if they see two Katakuris. I had a friend play NL into me last night and just fucking shit on me. Two Katakuris and fucking 3 aces. Yeah, like it can be tough, especially, and even if you see everything, you might not win, especially against a good NL. But we can at least have a plan. So the goal is to have a plan for everything. And Katakuri matchup also, we can talk about a plan. But let's go get started with it. I don't really want to talk about Nami. I don't really have an essential plan because, that deck's kind of fucking stupid. But we'll get into the guide. So let's talk about Doflamingo first. I mean, it's the easiest matchup in my opinion because when I played Doofy, I lost it too in the regional. I mean, I think Doofy can win. It's just kind of hard. So, but how does Doofy win? Is that you take a bunch early, and they play Jinbei Weevil, and that shit sticks because your hand's ass. You can't clear it, so you basically have to low roll to lose. But like, what should you be looking for is the question, and we really got to look at the key cards. The key cards here are Ice Age and Lucci. So those aren't the first priority. Honestly, let's go all the way down to the end and look at Jack. Jack is the first priority. Jack's super important to have on curve because once we get Jack down, Jack's going to be killing a body a turn, like really just depleting their resources and making sure they have no more bodies coming out, and then we can eventually win. So the way they're going to view the game is they're just going to keep hitting you. So playing cards like Brook, that are those pseudo blockers, are really going to make them have to swing into you, slowing down their game plan, allowing you more time and to get more cards in your hand and clear more of their bodies. Essentially playing Brook on curve is probably really good. Like the best way you can full out the game is playing Brook on 3 and Jack on 7. And obviously you want to pick first like over there. And the cards you want to be aware of are, Jinbei Weevil, obviously. Pudding is another card, so make sure to counter out, especially if it can build your graveyard and and you can play a Gecko off of it. You might have time for some Geckos. I don't know why I didn't put Gecko on there, but Gecko's low-key pretty important too. Another card is Perfume Femur, and it essentially lets them attack you for a +2k for 2 Dawn, and it's unblockable, so you need to play around that and not go down to 0. Or if you go down to 0, you need to have more than a 15k counter, but just don't go down to 0 because that's just stupid. Okay, anyway, that matchup's not too difficult. And if you guys have any questions about any of these matchups, just leave it in the comments. I'm going to try to be better about replying to comments, especially questions. Sorry, I've been just busy, but I'm trying to get on top of this. And as you can see with the new style of videos, I hope you guys like these. And anyways, let's go to the next slide. Okay, so the Rob Lucci matchup, the mirror. It's pretty even, but I can tell you a couple things that will make you favored into most standard Lucci players. And, probably will hurt me in the long term because I've met some of y'all at tournaments that have played me and been like, thank you for telling me this. And then I lost you. It's like, bruh, fuck. Okay, anyway, so let's talk about this matchup. Okay, you want to pick first all the time because you got to play Jack first. And playing Jack first just ruins their next turn because they can't just play Gecko. Because they're like, fuck, there's a Jack, and then if you have a Jack, you just essentially threaten them playing Ice Age and turning their Jack and killing your Gecko. So how do you combat that, especially if you're going second? So let's talk about going second first. So if you're going second, you're gonna want to play Kuzan on curve. Kuzan's really good because it prevents them from playing Jack unless they have a Who's Who. So they're gonna have to either Who's Who it or Sabo, and if they Sabo it, what you'll essentially do is play Sabo the next turn and lock down that Kuzan so that if they play Jack, they're fucked. Okay, but that's a really hard scenario, and that's in the most good Lucci players. It's not gonna happen. So essentially, what you gotta do is this: most Luccis will rest their Jack, even though I made a video about not resting their Jack. They still rest their Jack, and without a blocker, if they didn't play Sabo, it's fucked. So you swing into the Jack. That can waste a turn, yeah, okay, but that's essentially the only way you can those are the 2 ways you can get rid of Jack, and you have to get rid of Jack. There's pretty much no way around getting rid of Jack unless you just play your Jack, but then they might get rid of your Jack. It's confusing, but just listen to me here. Just play your Jack on curve. Alright, after that, it's literally just a Gecko Fiesta. How many Geckos can you play? How many Rebecca Spandines can you play? And as soon as that Gecko Fiesta runs out, you're gonna Rebecca Sabo. But what are those key tips that I was gonna tell you? So first thing is, when you're playing the mirror and they're hitting you for 5 early, take that shit all the way down to 2 on because unless you don't need the cards, then you can start guarding out. But you want to build your hand out so you have like 2 geckos, Tempest Kick, Ice Age. You want to see everything, right? And to see like that's like you always lose the mirror because they saw everything. Yeah, but maybe they took and you didn't. Because I see Lucci's all the time be guarding out of like a 5K swing when they're at 4 life. Just take it. Just take it. Like, because I'm not gonna be. You just think about the general game. Like, do we swing really big at each other? No. Every turn is just depleted. You're depleting all your Dawn, and it's you being used on removal. You're not swinging that big unless there's a previous body like a Gecko on the board, and that's when you start having to counter. But if you play this way, you should have the cards to just keep getting rid of bodies, and whoever keeps clearing the board will win this matchup. Okay. So let's talk about the purple Luffy matchup, and I think it's slightly not favored, but I think it is winnable against most purple Luffys. However, there are some key cards that I need you guys to be aware of. And the first key card is Magellan. Alright, Magellan's a fucker. Magellan, Dawn minus 1 takes you down a Dawn, so it can fuck your curve up really bad, not let you play that Gecko on time. And even when you can play that Gecko, it might not be like a good time because it rushed you down. So in this matchup, their goal is to play really big bodies and ramp up fast using their leader effect. You need to play that Kuzan on curve to combat that. In their current deck list, I don't think a lot of them are playing an answer to Kuzan, so having that Kuzan lets you have that -4, really making you able to kill those bodies. Another card that I think is really useful in this matchup is Sabo. Sabo comes in clutch because their Kaido, KOs a body down -5. And you need to make sure that the Kaido's effect's not actually being used, even if they choose to play it. So basically locking them out of Kaido. Be aware that they can also play 9-Mom too. However, this is a better situation because they're not swinging 10 at you and KOing one of your bodies. And if they do play that card, the Sabo can absorb the hit, right? Okay, so let's keep going. And let's talk about this Usohachi card. So Usohachi is a 3-cost 2K. It lets you rest at 5-cost blockers. So keep in mind that when planning out their lethal turns, that they can rest when you're blockers. So maybe playing a blocker isn't the best idea, especially when they can. But you can also equate for that -3 Dawn, so they'll have 7 Dawn that turn if they choose to use Usohachi. So, and this only works if they have 8 Dawn or more, or you have 8 Dawn or more. My bad. Okay. Now let's talk about BY, and this is my general game plan into it, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I have an okay win rate into it. And so what you want to do is you want to go second. You don't want to hit them. And then on top of that, you just want to play blockers early if you can, like a Rebecca, a Sabo. You don't even have to play blockers. And they're going to play their first 5-cost Luffy. You're going to clear that shit. Okay, even if it means hitting them once to get that -1, you're going to clear that shit. You're going to sit there, and then you're going to play Gecko. Or you're going to play Jack, and then you're going to play Gecko. And then at this point, now they're going to be probably awakened, all right? And you're going to start hitting them for 9. And make sure you still stay healthy. And I'm telling you, you guys have to stay healthy in this matchup. You have to guard every single card swing that takes 1 card, and you gotta maybe guard a swing that costs 2 cards to stay at that 3 life range sometimes, because you want to stay healthy in this matchup, because this matchup's going to be long. It's a grinder, but you can win if you just keep swinging 9 at them every turn and playing a Sabo. You gotta swing 9 at them every turn and playing a Sabo, and once you run out of Sabos, keep playing a Rebecca, and then Rebecca Sabo, Rebecca Sabo, Rebecca Sabo, Rebecca Sabo, and keep swinging 9 at them with your 2 bodies. You only need 2 big bodies, but you do need these 2 big bodies, and they're crucial. Okay? This matchup's still fucked. Don't get me wrong. You can still lose with this game plan, but this is the only game plan that has a chance of winning, and I've won with it before. However, in a meta where BY Luffy is a lot prevalent, I think that I could see myself playing, Nightmare Luffy again. Nightmare Luffy has won me many games. It's a great card. However, right now, I don't know if I want to tech for it. So let's go ahead and try this game plan out and see what it is. I haven't even played a BY in the last regional. So we'll see how this Treasure Cup goes this weekend. And if people are playing a shit ton of BY, maybe I play Nightmare, or maybe, I just play Nightmare this weekend and Expect it. Okay, the next matchup is Bonnie, and I told you guys this was like pretty free. You play the Kuzan on curve because you go second, so they can't play 10 cost OVs. You play the Kuzan on curve. Make sure to guard out some of their early swings, especially because if you don't have, not all of them, but like don't go down super low because they have really big bodies that will hit you for hard later. So you want to keep that life to take then. To absorb those swings. Their pretty much only game plan is like hoping you low roll. Don't see Jack because Jack just deals with Hawkins now. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of weird how you're gonna have to deal with it because of leader frick. But Hawkins isn't really a problem because you can just swing into it, and so it never really attacks at you. So because they don't want to like pitch cards for it. Okay, and then Bonnie, 5-cost Bonnie is annoying. It can set you a Dawn back like Magellan, basically, because it just turns off a Dawn. And it can make you not be able to play Gecko Mori on curve. Art could freeze when you're Moria, so they can't swing. So these are some annoying things that Bonnie can do. And probably those are the two best cards in this matchup, I think, are that Bonnie and that Doflamingo. And they can really push them to winning. However, I think this matchup's like pretty fucking easy. It could just because of the amount of removal we play and minusing, so Lucci can really get around it. Can really still clear all their bodies. They don't pump out bodies really fast or have really wide boards, so it's really easy to just take body by body and just eventually drain them out of hand. Okay. So let's talk about NL, my favorite yellow deck. Okay, so there's a couple things to be like 7-cost NL honestly isn't even that scary, to be honest. After playing against NL more, I think Katakuri Oro and 10-cost Ace are pretty damn scary. The way you lose this matchup is they get rid of all your geckos and you have no big bodies, or you don't see a big body on curve. Not seeing a big body on curve is really, really fucked actually, because it sets you back on tempo, especially when they're going to play their big body first. And that's kind of what happened to me. And then when you do play your big body, Katakuri puts that shit to the bottom. They don't care if you have like 6 lives. They will just drain your hand out of resources and you're out. So how can you combat this? Well, yeah, you have to try to play Kuz on a curve and try to conserve your resources efficiently clearing their big bodies. So you can clear more big bodies until they don't have big bodies. Because sometimes they don't high roll you, Another thing is that, be mindful that these games go long, so I think that hitting them all the time is fine if you're not seeing Gecko, so you can loop back to your Gecko and play Gecko. Because if you swing a leader every turn, you mill 2, and you eventually mill through your whole deck and use Spandine and Lucci through a Gecko, you can reorder your deck with, Tempest, Khalifa, get Ice Age, Gecko, and then your deck's in order, so you have a general idea of how to play. Fucking my bad, lost my train. How to play your next turns out because you can always draw Gecko. Do you know what I'm saying? Okay. So key cards, Sabo is for locking down your board so they can't Yamato it. I mean, Yamato's not really a big deal, but Raigo is, so Sabo can prevent Raigo and locking down your Morias. However, they can still Katakuri it. Jack's a good card because they can't Katakuri Jack. However, they can Raigo Jack, so it's like a win-win. It's a weird matchup for sure, and it's definitely one of those sleeper picks that can defeat Black, but I definitely think this matchup's winnable into the average NL, and there's not that many NLs, so I wouldn't worry too much about it. And if you do play one, just remember these things I said, and hopefully they don't know the things that we're talking about right now. So let's go to the next matchup, and that's Katakuri, which is probably a lot harder, way harder matchup because of okay. So first of all, you want to go second because if they're on first, a lot of their units, other than that Kiko Ninja turn on 5 Dawn, they're playing for odd curve. So on 3 Dawn and 7 Dawn, they're not going to get their leader effect at all. So it's really good to go second on there. And then so Katakuri is kind of is fucked because of the amount of trigger bodies they play on top of this stupid effect that make trashes your life. So you want to stay pretty healthy in this matchup. Obviously, cards that are really important are that Kuzan to clear some of their bodies, because some of their bodies can trigger out big. Same way Purple Luffy just randomly gets a ramp. This deck randomly gets bodies on the board, so having Kuzan to deal with another body to -4 is really good. Having Sabo is really good to extend the game because you might need a couple turns when they got like a big mom or a big mom on the board or a 7 mom on the board. And Gecko, you're probably only gonna need 1 Gecko, but you're gonna need this 1 Gecko to blow up their board and probably throw you in a blocker. You're gonna need 1 Gecko. This game's gonna be short. They're on a timer. I mean, we're on a timer because basically 10 mom, the end all be all to this deck. So yeah. That's Katakuri, and that's the full guide. That's the raw Lucci full guide for 8.5, and I hope y'all enjoyed. And this took me a fucking while to make, but I'm happy I did it, and I want to come out with more full guides like this. And for every set, in fact, I'll be updating Lucci, and I hope you guys enjoyed videos like this. And have any questions, just shoot me a DM on Twitter if you don't feel comfortable posting it on YouTube. Or if you want, you can just, leave a comment here and I'll reply. Thanks for watching, guys. See you.